Now, I'm pretty sure this is a take that people are either going to agree with me wholeheartedly on or going to want to crucify me on. I think Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie, is truly astoundingly terrible. And not just like bad, but like bad to the point that I feel like there's no way it couldn't have been a little bit on purpose to make it campy. Like, you know those movies that are campy, so bad they're good that you revisit them every single year because you're like, oh yeah, this piece of shit, let's watch that for some laughs. In my deep heart of hearts, I feel like Five Nights at Freddy's is one of those movies. And yeah, I'm very disappointed in it. I'm not saying that I was hoping for that. I'm not the biggest Five Nights at Freddy's fan, but I was hoping for a good movie. But we did not get that. And if you think we did, you are lying to yourself. Now, Five Nights at Freddy's is the new movie that came out this year starring Josh Hutcherson that is an adaptation of the game series of the same name made by Scott Cawthon. The Five Nights at Freddy's video games, I will say, are some very, very good games. I myself have never played them, but that is only because I am a scared little bitch when it comes to video games, and I can't get through, I don't know, 5 minutes of that without just having to close my computer and never look at it ever again. But I have watched Markiplier play like 125 episodes of Five Nights at Freddy's, so I feel like I kind of get the idea. I also have a son that is obsessed with the lore of it, and I've heard a lot of it over the years by him just reading the books and telling me everything he knows about it. So going into this, I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on what this movie was and what it was going for. The main problem with this movie, though, is that if you don't have a grasp of the lore and the video games, and the deep dives of these like 7-hour YouTube videos of knowledge going into this movie, you will be so incredibly lost because this movie is not made for anybody but the fans. You won't understand anything by it. Things are said out of context that have no meaning behind it unless you've read some like deep Reddit fan theory about Five Nights at Freddy's and the origins. But then if you want to take it one layer deeper, if you are a fan, this movie is bad from a fan's perspective. Some of the lore is messed up. Little to no game elements actually make it into this movie, and there's no scare factor to it. I will get to all of that, but let me explain the plot very briefly to anybody watching this video that doesn't know Five Nights at Freddy's that well. Five Nights at Freddy's follows Mike, a distraught security guard that bounces from job to job and was recently let go from a job from beating the shit out of a man in a fountain that he thought was kidnapping a boy that was actually just his son. We later find out that he did that because he thought that kid was getting kidnapped and his little brother was kidnapped when he was a little kid, and he blames himself for it, so he's obviously very sensitive to that. He goes and talks to a career counselor played by Matthew Lillard, who then offers him a job working night shift at a security place, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, an old shut down and abandoned restaurant that needs some security detail. Originally, he doesn't want to take this job, but he takes it when he finds out that his aunt or something like that is trying to get custody of his younger sister from him, so he needs a job to show that he is responsible enough to take care of a child. So he becomes the night security officer, and he quickly finds out that the animatronics within this restaurant are inhabited by the souls of young children that were kidnapped and killed and stuffed into these animatronics years ago by a man named William Afton that did this for like an entire generation. His sister comes and starts hanging out there with him, and the animatronics that are actually these little kids end up really, really liking his little sister and wanting to take this little sister in to become an animatronic and hang out with them forever. They also say that they know where his little brother is because he is also dead because he was kidnapped by William Afton. It is unclear if his little brother is also an animatronic somewhere or was at some point. But they're like, hey, if you give us your sister, we'll tell you everything you want to know about your little brother. You can spend your life in your dream. By the way, he sleeps all the time, just all the time. This movie is like 30% him sleeping. You can stay in this dream forever with your little brother, just hanging out with them. And he's like, yeah, take my little sister. And then immediately he's like, no, don't take my little sister. And then some other stuff happens, and he defeats the animatronics. And William Afton turns out to be Matthew Lillard character from the beginning. And they defeat him with a crayon drawing by the little sister girl, and happily ever after.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
It jumped up a notch.
It did, didn't it?
If that didn't make a whole lot of sense to you, it's because within the movie, it makes about as much sense, even though I shrunk down an hour-and-a-half movie into like 3 solid minutes. In the movie, it makes almost less sense, really. The game itself get this, is a guy that sits behind a desk and has to monitor cameras and the electricity output of his doors and lights and camera movement in order to survive Five Nights at Freddy's, otherwise the animatronics will come kill him. Now, does one time, the one mechanic of this video game where you're looking at cameras and controlling electricity, do you think that one time in this movie Mike might look at cameras and control electricity and open and shut doors to keep from dying from animatronics? No. Do you think that one time in this movie he is ever at threat of being killed by the animatronics? No. Do you think at any point in this movie the animatronics are scary or kill anybody? Well, yeah, kinda. They kill these like 4 random people and that's about it. I think that's the body count. The body count's like 4 or 5 and none of them really matter and aren't main characters in any kind of way. In fact, throughout this entire movie there are absolutely no scares. And the reason there's no scares is because these animatronics are silly as fuck to look at. Like, I wish that they waited longer than, I'm pulling a number out of my ass here, but I'm guessing 18 minutes into the movie to show a walking around and moving animatronic. And the more they move around, the sillier they are, and the less seriously I take them. I wish they would have subscribed to the old monster movie way of you don't see them move. If they did like a Weeping Angel thing, where the animatronics only move and you're not looking at them, that would have been great. And it would have factored in super well to the way the video game operates, as to where you're just flashing around the cameras and it's all just still objects. It's not scary in any capacity whatsoever, and it's not a good adaptation of anything from the video game. And I'm not saying that you need to take everything from the video game, because that would be terrible. It's good that it has some lore and some story, but there's really only one aspect of this video game, and it didn't have any of it, and that was a little disappointing. What also takes away from the fact that it's not scary in any kind of way, even though it's marketed as a horror movie, and honestly one of the scariest games I've ever seen, is the fact that it has wild tone switches in it. Like, there's a part in this where the main character and the local cop, that turns out to be William Afton's daughter, build a fort with the animatronics and the little girl. They build a fort, and there's like some happy-go-lucky music playing, and it just tone switches to like a kid's movie. And then 2 minutes after that, the cop lady's like, if you ever bring your sister here again, I'm gonna shoot you. It's wild, and it's like whiplash of tone switching, but it never scares me once, because it's just so all over the place with how you're supposed to feel about this movie. Now, what I was saying about this movie not making sense if you're not already a fan of the game and the lore, and yeah, this movie was made for fans of Five Nights at Freddy's, and it's been immensely successful. It's the best Blumhouse film, financially at least, ever made. I'm not going to sit here and say that it was a failure. I bet you they've greenlit 2 and 3 by now. And Josh Hutcherson and Matthew Lillard are acting their asses off in here, and I like the little winks and nods to Matthew Lillard's past projects with Scream. But there's a lot of assumptions that are made that people watching this have already seen these games and read the books and read the Reddit posts and the fan theories and all like that. Just even in a small detail, like at the end where William Afton says, "I always come back." What does that mean? Like, I know what it means. People that have played the games know what it means. But an average moviegoer that's just watching this as the film it is, isn't going to understand what he is saying. It's just a shitty dialogue. But I believe this movie's worst sin, worse than the fact that it wasn't scary, the fact that the animatronics looked so bad and were introduced way too early, worse than the tone switching, worse than the fact that 30 minutes of this movie is spent in the same dream sequence of Josh Hutcherson. Like, what the fuck is with that? It's the fact that it's just boring. It's really boring. Like, even though you see the monsters and it jumps right into it within like the first 20 minutes of the movie, it's so goddamn slow. I feel like there's so much more they could have done with this. They should have gone like a true horror movie. And if I was at least on the edge of my seat, just tense with these like Weeping Angel like giant animatronics that want to stuff people and this child into the animatronic, I would have had a better time. But at the end of the day, the fact that a single jump scare didn't scare me and there's no suspense buildup, I was just bored with this. And I understand that this is a very ranty and passionate video about something that I probably am not the target audience for. But I think that movies should kind of have a target audience with everybody. They shouldn't just be made for the fans of the games and the lore. I think that everybody should be able to enjoy it. And I think that once people get past the luster of finally seeing a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, they're also going to realize that this shit was awful. For the time being, I'll probably get a lot of shit for it. But mark my words, in a couple of years, everybody's going to agree with me. But anyway, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, check out my other videos.